Right then, people, Nuno Espirito Santo has been sacked. I'm going to break this video into two parts. One will be talking about Nuno Espirito Santo, the fact that he has left after doing such a great job, and was it the right call, and how did it get to this? The second part will be about the man or men. I mean, there's a few runners and riders, but it feels like one man in particular, Ange Postecoglou, could be the next manager of Nottingham Forest. How will that change this team? And that looks like a mess right now, but I'll explain all, because this is the JLA Tactics board, and on the JLA Tactics board you have lots of different ways of setting up your team, and we've got one brand new setup for you that I think you're going to bloody love. And it's not any of these options. And if you want to do social content, this is perfect for you. If you're a TikToker or whatever, or Instagrammer, whatever, is that a thing? I don't know. But the important thing is, this is where we need to get to. This is the Nottingham Forest squad, and there's been quite a lot of arrivals. There's a lot of money that's been spent, and it's a squad that, if we look back at last season, we would think that is a squad that cannot play Ange ball. But there are some aspects that will work, some aspects that may not work. We'll get to that. Let's talk about Nuno first, because the overarching feeling that I have when it comes to this team is, and his departure is, two things. One, it's just really sad, because it's someone that I myself incorrectly said wasn't capable, wouldn't survive. And yet he utterly thrived, to the point where it wasn't a fluke. It was a really clear, clever strategy where he got talented players to play better. And that comes from him. It really does. And for him to step in, and obviously, initially it was a bit turgid, but it shows how powerful wins are. And this team won a lot of games last year. To double their points tally is absolutely outstanding. The second thing that I think is crucial to talk about here is the fact that he was a dead man walking. He had to go, because the comments that he came out with in the recent press conferences, where he's talking about, we're not close anymore, we were close, we're not, that's not the reality. You can't say that. So why is he saying that? Now, I know absolutely nothing. And Nottingham Forest fans, if you're watching this, I am fascinated to hear what you've got to say. That's the whole point of this channel, is that I can learn from you as much as you learning or hearing from me. So get involved in the comments and tell me what you agree with, what you've heard, what you believe to be hearsay, what you believe to be the truth, because there is a lot of that, swirling around Mr. Marinakis and Nottingham Forest at times. And so what is the truth? But what I can't understand is the fact that Nuno Espirito Santo would speak in that way, would be that forward with his criticism of the owner and then of the team. That, just for someone who was able to kind of absorb the fire that sometimes was surrounding Nottingham Forest, be it points deductions or people coming onto the pitch or Clattenburg or all these different things, he has been the calm in the storm. So for him to step forward the way that he did, for me, felt like he was getting ahead of something. It felt like he was trying to get ahead of the narrative a little bit. And look, we don't know the murky world of football in the sense of, the politics that are around it. And it did just feel that when he speaks like that, you just can't do that. You can't. So he knows what he's doing. He's trying to get ahead of the curve, in my opinion, to kind of go, this isn't my, I'm not happy. This isn't my problem. I've done nothing wrong. Now, that might be right or might be wrong. But I think in terms of that and the feeling that the narrative that is around the owner at Nottingham Forest, he does it his own way. And his actions have spoken a lot louder than his words for Nottingham Forest. And he's taken them from one place to a very different place, a very exciting place. And he has backed this group as well, and have brought in a lot of players and spent a lot of money and created a squad that's actually pretty exciting, I think. So it feels like there's been a breakdown there. It's been widely reported that breakdown has come from his relationship with Edu, which is an interesting one, I think, as well. And what I'm not seeing yet, and maybe, I don't know, who knows the answer to this, is why has that broken down? And then why has there been such a change in the behaviour of Nuno? Because that feels very clearly directed. And from there, it's going to be very difficult. Now, as I say, it's been a fiery relationship. And maybe that's something where you yourself are allowed to be fiery if everyone else is. So maybe it was something that could have been salvaged. But once she comes out with those comments, you do feel like that is the end of all of it. And I think it's just a shame, really, because I think the squad that's been built there is really, really good. And I guess the question now is, can this group do what the next manager wants to do? Because, if we have a look at how they set up last year, and we can kind of go back to all the players that they brought in, because they have spent a lot of money on a lot of players. Shair's come through, Zinchenko. This is Douglas Luiz. You've got McAtee's coming in, Amari Hutchinson, who's not even in the European squad, which is absolutely amazing. Calamuendo's come in as well, which would be an interesting one to talk about. And Ndoye, of course, replacing Elanga. Jesus coming in as well. Bakwa as well. So for more, a lot of wide options for this team as well. But if we go back to how he set up, and then we start to talk about the runners and riders, and in particular, we've obviously got to talk about Ange. This was how Nuno got so much out of this group. So much. And the amount of 1-0 wins that were there, the game management that was there. And going into this new season in the Europa League, it's an interesting one, because there were a grumbling or two from what I'd read, and I've read a lot this morning about it all, that, is Nuno that guy where it'll take you from A to B, but you can't take you from B to C? I don't know. And I think that's a real sad thing for Nuno, to not be able to experience that. But when you think of those managers that are maybe just that bit more glamorous, and actually people fall into this trap a lot and get it wrong a lot, and the proof will be in the pudding when it comes to that. Going and getting that guy that's going to maybe open you up a bit and be a bit more glamorous and really go at it. Of course, Ange Postecoglou is that kind of manager. And it's amazing, isn't it, that year that Ange has had, I was such a fan of his last year, and I kind of want to be a fan again, but I think it's hard. I'm trying to get away from that right now to try and give him that opportunity, because there was a really interesting dynamic with him at Spurs, and it did galvanise the fan base. And so can he come in and do it at Nottingham Forest? Now, if he is going to take the job. And the other options are Jose Mourinho's linked as well. Brendan Rodgers has been linked, and Sean Dyche as well. So let me know, Forest fans, who are you thinking? Who's the best option there? I would suggest that Jose Mourinho could be a lot of fun from the neutral point of view. I wouldn't hate to see it. And in terms of playing this way, big target man in Chris Wood, who has excelled, to kind of, tamper with that and throw that away. Think of, having wide players that want to get involved as well, being able to break, being defensively sound. There's a lot of things that the Jose Mourinho that we know over his sort of second era, that he would enjoy a lot of this, I think. But it looks like it's going to be Ange. And if it is to be Ange, can it work? Well, I don't know. Let's have a look. Because we might have to go back to the squad here. Because if we talk about the sort of setups first, and what I've done is I could be asked to bring Elanga in. So we'll keep Ndoye there, because it does feel somewhat like for like, right? And if we move it on one more, this is the obvious change that you would go from. And the thing that I think is interesting here is, if you're playing this way with Ange, first of all, Sells obviously would have to come and sweep and do all those things that Vicario had to do. That's if Ange is the same guy that wants to play the same way. Would he change? Was it bigger than just look at the injuries, let's get over the line, let's win the Europa League last year? Has he changed his idea on identity? I would fascinate to know. And if he obviously gets the job, then that will tell. But the big thing here, and we can kind of flip between the two, but if you go back to last year, what is the thing between these two? And as I say, if you're enjoying the tactics board, you want to get involved, the link's in the description. What is the big difference between these two things? I think previously, space to drive into, right? Morgan Gibbs-White was Elanga, of course, last year. Gibbs-White can help support as well. You've got energy from Elliot Anderson to get up the pitch, right? You had a team that was able to get up the pitch. But importantly, I think the space was where it was here, right? The space was in their half of the pitch. And you had really sound defensive back line. You had two banks you had a box of four in there, but Anderson obviously had that freedom to sort of use his energy a lot of the time. Of course, Yates would be coming in and playing in this team a lot of the time as well, so I don't want to take that away from it. Anyone getting annoyed about that. But you go to the next one, and the way that Ange wants to play, where's the space now? The space is here. Now, I'm not saying Nottingham Forest can't play this way. What I'm saying is this is a very different way of playing. Now, Murillo normally on the left? I feel like he is. Maybe I'm wrong there. Let me know. Look, they want to get at the players that they're defending against, and they've been happy to do that and happy to drive with it. Are they just as good going this way with these big spaces? Sells, is he as good as a sweeper keeper to come out and deal with that? I think there are some real positives, by the way. And of course, there's a lot of players that you can bring into this. If we go back to the squad that could maybe fit this way of working, right? But one player that I think could work really well under Ange, if you're having Williams on that left-hand side, the ability to do that Udogie, element of it. And look, he likes to put his crosses in, but if he's on this left-hand side, he might be able to start there, but also come inside a little bit more. Hudson-Odoi, and Ndoi, on both sides. You've got someone like, sort of Brennan Johnson-esque, I think, in terms of being able to make those runs, just like Alanga did. And Hudson-Odoi, in terms of maybe that bit of quality and dribbling ability to take on. Look, you're going to want to cut in, which is something, let's say, like Mattis Tell like to do. And then those two in the middle, I think, energy-wise, are we worried about these two energy-wise? I don't think we are. I think that's exciting. And I think in terms of Gibbs White, as that ability to crash the box, which I think sometimes Postecoglou liked his players to do a lot of the time. Pablo Sarr or Kulusevski, kind of having that freedom to just show energy and quality. Anderson's got that in his locker as well. Does he want to drop deeper that little bit more? That's a bit more, say, Maddison-like or Bergvall-like. I think there's something, there that you don't need to be afraid of either in terms of things that could work. And obviously the style of play would be more exciting. There are some red flags for me. And also we've got to talk about the players that would come in as well. Because the squad, I think, we could see new things here if Ange comes through. A couple of red flags for me. As I say, the two centre-backs in terms of going backwards, if you imagine, say, a Dragusin struggling, right, for Tottenham, him and Milinkovic, how different are they? Milinkovic's so comfortable in here, like world-class in his own box and the opposition's as well. But if you're defending here, it's different. And we've obviously seen that. Another one I'd be wary of is, like, who is that guy who's going to sit at the buttery biscuit base, as I like to call it? Sangara good enough? Yates good enough? Douglas Luiz, is he your guy? Do you bring him in? All of a sudden that looks very, very attacking. Is Elliot Anderson that guy? Do you do that? Is that the way to go about it? Possibly. Is that a new role that we could see for Anderson? Is that the best use of him? In terms of wanting to get on the ball all the time, could be really comfortable. So that could be something to kind of keep an eye out for as well. And then the other red flag that makes me kind of concerned about Ange specifically working at Nottingham Forest, and there's always going to be a moment where you need to move on from this, is the fact that can you play Ange ball with Chris Wood? If you think of Solanke up top, obviously for Tottenham, that sort of sacrificial striker that can press. Are you going to throw a guy, I think his XG was 13, scored 20 odd goals. Do you really want to throw that in the bin for someone who's going to press for you? Now, we go straight back to the sort of starting position here with the squad. That's where you start to see these new options, and it'd be interesting to see how they would fit in an Ange Postecoglou side. And I think it is fascinating because you've got, in terms of techie lads, you've got a lot more techie lads there. Like Hutchinson can come be an attacking midfielder as well if you want to do that. You've got some options in terms of those wingers as well. Backwards just come in from Strasbourg, I think it is. And in terms of those strikers, you've got three big boys, but Jesus, how good is he? That's my biggest question. But he has a lot more energy. So if you want the sacrificial pressing monster, then fine. Callum Owendo is so different. He's so much shorter. He's got a bit more about him in terms of wanting to get on the ball and drive. So would we see someone that you've spent 30 million quid on Is he going to come to the fore and Chris Wood going to go into the background? There's just danger in that, isn't there? There's risk in that because Chris Wood has done so well for this team. But I think the important thing to say is that this is a good squad. It's a really good squad. But who will be the players that have the right profiles to come to the fore? And will that take Forest further forward? Or will you sort of break the great foundations that you've built? Or special option number 3, which I think is the gentle optimistic route, is that often we see, there's a theory I have, let me know if you agree with this one. When a manager is so far this way, Nuno, and then you bring in a manager who's so far that way, and I don't think you can say Nuno's has been wrong because he's been entirely justified in the suggestion that he's a great manager. But he's absolutely about, can we get that goal? Can we play on the break? Let's about how a few passes do we need to get up the pitch, attack that space, score a goal, and then let's close the game out. And very different, right? But by going from this point of defensive solidity to this point of Ange, this extremity of kind of ideally being somewhat all-out attack and free-flowing, will you find yourself in the middle? And with this group of players, is that actually something you can be quite excited about? It's fascinating. I don't hate it. I'm certainly unsure about it. But what do you think? How do you feel about Nuno? Did he kind of do it to himself? Do you like the idea of Ange? Can this work? And can this squad play under him? Who will be the winners? Who will be the casualties from this, aside from Nuno? Let me know your thoughts. And subscribe to the channel if you're new.